pilot to TFC
Uncensored.
TFC Uncensored. This is where we're going to talk about all things TFC, and we're going to get a real fan's perspective, right? Real fan's perspective. We're going to analyze some of the games. We're going to talk about the club and current events. We're going to look at some post-game analysis and maybe hopefully some pre-game analysis and what we should be expecting from Toronto FC.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be our first video. Obviously, there's been a lot of news around the club recently, and I'd like to get everyone's takes. You can see in our bios, you can DM us or send us any emails, and we'll respond freely with our opinions and our expertise and insight on every basic topic around Toronto.
Yeah, and just to be clear, right? We're not here to show facts. We're not here to tell you exactly the way it is. There's going to be fact checkers out there, and let us know. Email us if you have a question, or if we're wrong or incorrect with a stat, or if you want your own opinion, or if you have your own opinion, or you want us to discuss something. Let us know. We'd be happy to talk about that. So, where do we start from here? So
you want to start? Okay, we'll cut that. It'll be like intro, and then we could do just do it. Want to just do a segment for fun? Like I can search up what's his name.
Yeah. So now you can sort of cut.
Yeah, this would be cut Wi-Fi because actually just go on Instagram and you'll see. Because I don't have my phone, I usually do it.
Insta?
Yeah, just check. You'll see it on any TFC guy's Insta. Here. Just what's his name? Maxime Dominguez. Okay, so you want to just do a segment on him? So,
all right.
So news came out, rumor for a new TFC signing. It looks pretty likely to happen. His name is, Maxime Dominguez?
Yeah, Maxime Dominguez. And again, if we're mispronouncing that, we're not here to be specialists. We're just here as fans.
Yeah. Apparently he's a 29-year-old Swiss midfielder, central attacking midfielder, like an Osorio. And he's from I think the Brazilian league or something like that. So, not going to expect too much, and it's obviously going to be another loan deal, which we know, Hernandez loves his freaking loan deals that he's been doing all year, essentially.
Look, I'm just going to cut right to the chase. This is a TFC2 player without calling him a TFC2 player. How many of these? It's like we're starving and we're getting crumbs and we're thinking this is the best meal ever. I can understand. Maybe this player could be a diamond in the rough, and maybe this player is going to eventually, turn into a promising player. But are these the type of players that we need right now? Are these the solutions to our problems? And we can't look at these problems as being acute problems. We've been going through this for a very long time, right? Far more than what we should be expecting. So again, on this new player, right? This is out of the blue. Have we heard anything about him?
I totally agree. I mean, all of our signings recently have just been simple loans of just looks like players filling in gaps. Teo Corbianu looked like a fantastic signing. Everyone was hyped up. He's basically secured his spot on the bench for the next few games because of his poor performances. We got Flores, Longstaff, all these kind of players that kind of just fill roles. So I'm not too sure how much this kind of random player can bring to the team. Whereas, I mean, look, we never know. Like you said, he could be a diamond in the rough, could be an excellent signing, and we could have just gotten very unlucky over these last few signings. But I'm pretty confident, knowing our luck, that he's just going to be another role filler player that'll probably, which we did need. I mean, I did say many times that we needed depth in the midfield, but it's not going to be any big signing that's going to change this club at all.
Yeah. I mean, can he produce? I mean, I have to. I mean, obviously, every TFC player is dear to my heart. But can this be, let's say, a Matty Longstaff improvement? He probably could be, right? Could be an improvement there. Whereas Matty should be a bench player. He should be coming off the bench, or maybe in a lockdown role, or filling in for some injuries. But we look at a player like Matty Longstaff, which I think is he's a great player, but is he the caliber of player that TFC and its fans require? And I think the answer to that is no.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to judge because you watch the games and like basically every single player on TFC besides maybe like a few, depending on the game, is playing like shit. Like they're all horrible. You can't. It's hard to single one person out. What I was thinking would change the dynamic of this club was the rumors that have passed over that Suso signing, the Sevillan attacker, the Spaniard. Signing him would be a huge change, which I think is very unlikely now, since it was up to him, and I'm pretty sure it's been confirmed that he said no. But TFC need to make a big move like that, a new DP move where they can either choose to buy out Insigne or do the 3 DP model, because that's what the club needs. Like getting a player on a short-term loan from a foreign country is not gonna improve the team at all. We're just gonna be stuck at last place just with one extra guy on the roster.
Right. Now, I just want to reiterate about, because I made a comment about Matty Longstaff. Got to admit, love the player. I think he's great, but I think in his position, we need to, overall in that area of the pitch, we need to get better. Can Matty Longstaff, and this is not a slight on Matty, but can he be that player? I think he can, right? Just not right now.
Yeah.
Can Cozy Thompson ever be that player? I don't think in anywhere in the near future. Right. There's a few players that, they are depth players. And I think in particular, going back to Matty, he could be that depth player. And this new potential signing, he's probably going to be another depth player. But it goes back to the question, where is our starting 11?
Yeah. Right. We don't have a set starting 11. Like, again, Fraser said at the beginning of the year, is nobody's earned their spot. Right. Like, there's no set starters. It was just game by game. I mean, it's a good thing and a bad thing because he's proven it true. Like, for example, Corbianu, he's got his spot yoinked by Etienne. Sorry, first by Spicer and then by Etienne when Spicer wasn't available. The guy's just going to be riding the bench. Yeah, I mean, that's a good thing, but it's a bad thing if everybody is just equally as shit. Yeah, right? There's no player that actually makes a difference. It's like Bernadeschi, Insigne make as much of an impact as guys like Cozy Thompson, because they're, as much as you don't like me saying that, but they really don't. They don't make the impact that we need. Like, luckily we got Kerr saving us a few goals, but those are pure luck goals off a fluke counterattack that we cannot rely on, or we're going to keep losing games.
Well, that's going to be a whole other topic, and that'll be another segment, talking about the individual players. We're going to be talking about, the 3 DP model, the 2 DP model, what it takes to be a successful team out there. Where these players are on the depth sheet, or where they should be on the depth sheet. We have to look at ourselves as TFC. We are not a second-tier team. We are not a development team. Okay, we are a team that should be, fighting for championships, fighting for trophies, year after year. There's no reason why we cannot be the Yankees or the Red Sox of baseball, right? Or any other, let's say, dominant team in hockey or football or any other professional sport. There were, let's say, the LA Lakers. There's always an expectation in basketball. The LA Lakers, they're always going to go to the show, and if not, they're going to be close to it. That's what TFC is. That's what the fans require. That's our expectation, right? And we're going to comment on it. And until we start seeing results, you're going to hear us chirping quite often. But the fans, the fans, this is for the fans, by the fans, and the fans are going to voice their opinion.
Yeah, I would say, when it comes to Toronto FC, the only party that really thinks highly of Toronto FC is not even themselves, but it is the fans. Like, you talk to anyone internationally, they're not going to really know who Toronto FC was, but to us, we're a team that went to 3 finals in 4 years. 3 MLS Cup finals in 4 years, and then an additional Champions League final in that year, losing 2 MLS Cup finals, losing that Champions League final, and then winning the MLS Cup. To then COVID happens, and now we're back to the bottom and nobody remembers but us, apparently. Yeah. Whereas Toronto is just in this, what they call rebuild, but there's evidently no excuse to call it a rebuild. There's so many teams that turn it around like that. Like, I don't like to use Miami as the example because they're the obvious example. They signed Messi and they went from a last place team or second last place team to a first place team. But they're like teams like Chicago, LA Galaxy under Vanny. a bunch of different teams. You just got to make a few good signings and you're done. But what we're doing is we're having problems with our complacency and choosing not to make decisions ever since Jason Hernandez has been in power, let's say, and that big one comes down to Insigne.
Well, I mean, I think this is more of an introductory to what we want to do here, but we've had a whole lot of conversations, on Insigne, on Bernadeschi, on Petretta, what these expectations are, this fallacy of a rebuild, right? Of what that means, and the mentality of the fans and how the organization projects these ideas of the idea of a rebuild, which is just preposterous. Like that, let's forget about talking about a rebuild. You can rebuild in 1 year.
Yeah.
There should be no reason.
And
Notwithstanding,
yeah.
right? Notwithstanding, we've been rebuilding for
years.
how many years now?
Right.
Right. We can't get our shit together.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to ask for you, the viewer, as a Toronto FC fan, me in particular, right after the end of last season and the season before that, obviously very frustrated is we didn't make playoffs, and then the season before that we came dead last. So having that frustration and being like, we frickin' suck and we need to get better. But we looked on the bright side and we said, look, we have a long off season. We don't have to worry about playoffs. We can figure out all the contracts in the offseason, come back stronger. We've been doing that for now this is the third year where we're doing that once again, and we're still making excuses for ourselves saying, oh, we're rebuilding. It's complete bullshit. Whereas you have the longest offseason in MLS and have basically the worst offseason. The longest, but the worst. You're making nothing, but you're signing a TFC2 player. You're signing guys on loans you're signing guys on loan who are injured and then are bench players. You're signing this Corbianu guy. I mean, I'm not knocking the player at all, but they're not least impactful players, and you're keeping around your same DPs who have been bringing you nothing all year with just a terrible team and horribly run organization.
Yeah. So I mean, we don't script any of this, right? We never introduced ourselves.
No, who cares?
This is
Sonny
and Mike. So yeah, this is not scripted. We're not doing any stats prior to. This is just conversation, and we decided to record it. But I mean, I wanted to start off with one topic, and it's really a question for the viewers. Okay? And it's a question for the viewers, and then the one topic that I want to talk about is injuries, and then I want to go back, and then we'll touch back on. Prior to the bloody big deal, right? And the
history.
Yeah, the history. So we're going to talk about, what led us, how did we get to that trouble? What were the key factors? How can we duplicate that? But we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But just fast forward from that point on is what, first and foremost, I think what we need to talk about is the amount of injuries.
Yeah.
The amount of injuries.
Way too many.
And there's a couple of things I wanted to talk about. And this is just, again, this is my opinion, and for the fans, you may agree or disagree with me, but I remember specifically in Javenko's last year with Toronto FC, he was having some injury problems, okay? These are sort of unprecedented injuries. And he was having also some bad touches on the ball, and there were some excuses, or maybe he's lost his form or whatnot. But it was the same year that the Argonauts had moved into BMO Field, and the players were complaining about the pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I remember specifically Javenko complaining about the pitch, and that the pitch was causing his injuries. Now, you take that with a grain of salt, and that was his last year with Toronto FC, and I don't recall, after Vanny had left. After Javenko left, if we were getting these insane injuries. But what I have noticed was, so is the pitch playing a role in some of these injuries? Possibly.
I mean, we've had, how many injuries have happened just during pregame warmups? Like, remember Michael Bradley? Michael Bradley injured himself when he had that crazy injury. I'm pretty sure it was in a pregame warmup.
Yep.
Ola Brynhildsen just had an injury 8 minutes prior to the game. Kerr was told he was starting just because of the warming up on that pitch, and guys like Wingo who have been injured on that pitch and I don't know. just a lot of examples of injuries on that pitch. But
also
Yeah.
Larea last year, right before he went for his surgery, I think he hurt himself in the very first game, and that was an away game. So I mean, it's not necessarily a
first
Toronto pitch, but you
Not
hear
unsustainable.
Yeah, but you hear these elite athletes, right? And as much as us fans, we like to think we know how to play the game at that level. We'll never know unless we've actually been on that pitch and we've gone to the show and you've competed at that elite level. But you look at let's say a basketball player like Steph Curry, right? He knows where the weak boards are on the floor. Hockey players are dialed into their stick. Is it safe to say that soccer players are dialed into maybe their cleats and maybe the pitch, their home field, and they expect it to be in a certain way? I don't know what the answer is, but all I know is that ever since the Argonauts came in, right, and there's been complaints about the pitch, maybe that's playing a role in the injuries. But I did want to say one other thing about the injuries.
Yeah.
Right? Is during our Vanny years, Vanny played a very controlled game, a very methodical game. Okay, what I have noticed now, with Armas, Bob Bradley, Dunfield. Don't get me started on Dunfield. There
Fraser,
was Fraser. Then we also had that other intern. Spanish
Perez.
Perez,
Yeah.
right? We are playing this run and gun. Forget about bodies up the pitch. It's horses up the pitch. Okay, run and gun up the pitch, bombing up and down. These are not soccer players anymore. These are marathon athletes,
True American athletes.
Yeah,
playing
sprinters.
soccer.
These are sprinters.
Yeah.
Right? We're asking too much from these players to play the beautiful game, to constantly put that many kilometers and pressure on their body. Right?
Yeah.
I just that's what I noticed. It's this run and gun, long bomb, high tempo, lot of injuries, right? And it's not working for us. And
Exactly.
for
It's
some
not
reason,
even producing.
Yeah, and it's this North American, like run and gun style of play. Maybe it works for some teams, but it's not working for us.
Yeah. I mean, another thing on injuries, under Vanny, we had basically no injuries. I remember watching games like back in 2016, 2017. It was the same lineup every single game. Maybe the odd injury here and there, but when we're TFC, and last season in particular, I was very fed up with the injuries. I was every that's why we kind of fell apart after midway through the season. We started losing because we just didn't have the depth. And then coming into this next season, I was like, all right, if we're going to have these injuries and we can't fix this problem, we need to sign a lot more depth just to compensate for injuries. Just sign a lot more depth, get these guys on loan. But they didn't do it. We've had the same amount of depth, if not less. Let's look at our midfielders. We have Flores, Osorio, Longstaff, and Coelho. We have 4 essential midfielders. And then now you're going to tell me Marcus Simmermancic is now your next midfielder. Or Cozy Thompson that filled in that role last season. We just do not have. We don't have the depth. We don't have the depth to compensate for the injuries, and we don't have the quality to actually win us games. So they gotta choose to either know how to fix these injury problems or sign enough depth, because for whatever reason our style of play kills our team.
It could also be like when we're under Vanny's regime. We had possession of the ball most of the time, and maybe our pass accuracy was that much more. So, under the Vanny era, we let the ball do the running.
Mm-hmm.
And I find now we're always trying to catch up to the ball. The players, last game was against New York Red Bulls.
Yeah.
Right? So last game was against New York Red Bulls. We couldn't get the ball past half. We're always playing on the back heel. And again, like what Sonny was saying, we scored. Now, when we say a lucky goal, it was a nice.
It was a good goal, but it was. You gotta call it lucky.
But the first touch. So the first hockey assist was by Insigne. Okay, he made a significant play to push the ball forward to Etienne, who got past the defender.
It was
curled in a beautiful cross.
Probably 15 yards out, header off the bar after the goalie got a touch to it. So I don't know how lucky you want to get.
Come on, that was a beautiful goal. Okay,
it was a beautiful goal, but it was lucky. It was totally against the run of play.
So what if he scores, he's lucky, and if he doesn't score, he's unlucky.
It's a very low percentage goal, is what I'm trying to say.
He put it in the net. That's what I'm gonna say.
Well, good for him then. Then he's our fucking best player now.
Well, listen. So going back to the whole like this injury thing, right? You know, are we sustaining injuries because it's our pitch? Is it the poor preparation? Is it the run and gun
style? Is it the fitness staff? Who knows?
Is it the fit? Yeah, exactly. Is it the fitness staff? But I'd like to think, you know, these are elite athletes. They should be, you know, in prime physical condition. But, you know, we look at all these things, right? Maybe it's a combination of all these things, but, you know, maybe the biggest thing is the fact that we do not have a system. We do not know how to move the ball off the pitch. Or is it because we do not have those players that know how to get into those open spaces to move the ball up the pitch, right? We definitely have problems, and you cannot just go and sign 1 or 2 DPs, 3 DPs, and think you're going to win a championship. We need a system, and we need to move the ball up the pitch. And once we possess the ball more, I think our injuries will seriously start to decline.
And one thing Hernandez said and Peely when they had their preseason interviews, they said one of the things they want to focus on is the club ethos, which is basically like establishing the club identity. And like you were saying, you can't just say you're establishing a club identity and then bring in Fraser, plays a different formation every game, plays different players every game. Like I'm not going to knock him because I don't mind that style of play. Like you play the best formation based on the players you have. Like I like that. I like what he has to do. I've personally loved all the lineups he's put out. I think he's always put the best lineup out there. Just being straight up honest, but we don't have the personnel to actually like take the game by the scruff of the neck and make a game plan. We just roll with the guys we have and hope to get lucky. Whereas, as much as by the end of last season I was okay with Herdman leaving, Herdman came in and he was die-hard TFC. He was at the ground 24/7. He checked the other team's pitches and made training sessions based off those pitches to best prepare the players for those games. And what I think, this is my theory, is I think Herdman knew that we sucked, that he didn't have good players, the team was horrible. So what he did was he played a 3-5-2, right? Or 3-4-2-1, sorry, which is more like you can call it 5 defenders if you want. But he had basically 5 guys behind the ball at all times. He had Bernadeschi playing as a defensive player on the right wing back because he knew he's a horse. And what happened in the first 4 games of the season? First game, 0-0 tie, didn't concede a goal. Second game, we got a win with a lucky Insigne goal. A game after that, another win against Charlotte, I think it was something like that, another Insigne goal. But that's what Herdman's style was: defend and rely on a lucky goal from our designated player, which was Insigne, and when Bernadeschi stepped up and he scored. So you got to admire his coaching style, because I think he knew that we were horrible and wanted to play that type of game, which eventually ran out when we had too many injuries and ended up losing and tying the rest of our games for a very long period of time. And then when Fraser came in, I was pretty optimistic about what he can do, because you can recognize Herdman's flaws and build off them, right? And say, you know what, Herdman sat back too much, let's try to bring the game to them. But now we're realizing that we do not have the team for that, and that I feel Herdman knew a lot more than these guys know about the players, and the players are not fit to play Fraser's style or to play any style that he wants to win us games.
Or do we know what that style is? Like, what is our ethos? I mean, the one thing, I was a little bit critical of Herdman when he was with Team Canada, and then when he came to Toronto FC. Tactically, I thought, he could have been a lot better. Use of personnel, I thought he could have been a lot better. I thought Bernadeschi played a fantastic role as a wingback. However, I think you're underutilizing a player in that role. But, Bernadeschi said, "Hey, you want me to defend? I'm going to defend. I'll do whatever it takes." I mean, that's a player, Bernadeschi, who wears his heart on his sleeve. But the one thing that we could have eventually, and it's just a shame that we lost Herdman, those players, in every Team Canada player, and every TFC player, they will jump in front of a bus for Herdman.
Yeah.
And that was the one thing that Herdman, he knew how to own a locker room. And that is something that is going to be sadly missed. Now, I'm not saying that Frazier has lost the locker room. I'm not saying that. But where Herdman lacked in his tactical abilities, boy, did he make up for it for engaging with, engaging with the fans, engaging with the players.
He was all about the players.
Yeah, showing up, walking on the pitch, a day before the game, checking it out. I mean, when was the last time you heard of a coach commenting on the artificial turf at
BC Place?
I think it was New England.
Or was it? Yeah, New England.
Yeah, it was like waving. Who talk about that, right? I've never heard anybody comment on the turf like that. So he was so well prepared. This guy lived and breathed football for the club. But the reason why I say he was weak tactically is because at the club level, right? Because let's face it, this was his first time, coaching a club.
His first club, and it was evident in games. Like, we were able to get the ball deep a lot, but every single play, it was very frustrating to watch. Everything was being forced to Bernardeschi, right? Everything was forced to Bernardeschi, and he was getting shut down every time. Because if you're the coach of a team defending Toronto FC, you're going to say, well, their only half-decent player is Bernardeschi. So shut him down. He's going to cut it on his left every single time, or do a chip cross with his right foot down by the byline. But it was frustrating watching them attack because they didn't know exactly what to do.
And Herdman did the best that he could
Yeah.
with what he inherited a team. He inherited a team that spent all their money on the wings,
Right.
with nobody connecting them in the middle, no natural striker. Herdman did the best that he could, but at least Herdman tried to bring in players. Like, he brought in Matty, he brought in Yothello, he brought in Flores. Right? He
also brought in Gomes.
Long.
Yeah, Long.
He brought in these players. But what have we done under Frazier?
This is what I think is Hernandez said over we were going to look to sign Eldor Shomadorov, the Uzbekistan striker from Roma, and he said he didn't want to rush into anything buying him because he didn't want it to be more of like a panic purchase. That's what he said. He didn't want to rush into anything. So what he's been doing is he's been loaning. Every single signing he's made is a loan. We haven't purchased any player yet, as I'm aware of. Everyone's been loans. So it's almost like he's playing a very what am I looking for? Like stable approach and very limited. Just kind of like fill in gaps for now while they work on whatever the hell they got to work on.
Well, he's basically renting the box.
He's renting.
Which you can say in one aspect.
It's a good tactical move. Like you've been saying for years, you want to loan players, but it's not enough to establish an identity. Which is like if we don't know how good the players are going to be, why buy them on long contracts? Which is a mistake we've made in the past.
If you're getting a player on loan, right? I guess the question is how much are you financially committed to that player, right? And are we getting these players on loan because we're just going to see how they are and then maybe with an option to buy? Which, you think about it, it's probably a really good thing. Or do we just don't have the money to sign players and we have no other choice but to loan or to get them on loan? So I guess if the player is good enough, right, then hopefully you can buy them, and they want to stick around and stay. But when we look at our players, in my opinion, I think we underutilize the loan option. We have so much opportunities. Think about how many amazing center backs there are out there that are playing in first, second, third division football over in Europe, and would flourish over here. Would do a fantastic job, right? Let's get them over here on loan. You don't like them, get rid of them. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I think we're doing well with, I think we're doing the best we could with signing players. It's just we're signing a bunch of mediocre players that fit in with TFC. Like, everyone we're signing, it's like you can call them a TFC player because they're just TFC players. But yeah, like there's to make this club succeed, you need an entire revamp of where you're allocating your money and get new get new designated players. I would say get a new coach that has a system. But yeah, right now Frazier to me looks like the puppet that Hernandez wants to play.
Yes.
Yeah.
Puppet.
He's
okay.
Frazier. Like, look, when you look at Herdman, a lot of people saw Herdman as the very happy, nice guy, like very love oriented. He loved that word love. He always used to say that. But he was very strict when it came to the players. Like, he was like, look, you guys gotta fucking produce, and he got behind the team. Like, he got behind the team and motivated them. Whereas Frazier, every time we keep losing, he says, "Oh, I'm very optimistic about this team." It almost seems like he's not allowed to say anything, and he's got his hands tied behind his back by somebody. Because,
but to that point, if we had Herdman coaching this team right now,
way different.
Insigne would not be sitting on the sidelines, guaranteed. Okay, so what is this BS that I want to talk about that? What's this BS that Frazier's saying? Insigne doesn't fit his system. And then after 4 games, when we have, again, all these injuries, 4 games into the bloody season, we have all these injuries, Peely and Hernandez says to Frazier, well, if you want to use Insigne, go ahead and do it. Well, whose call is it?
Yeah.
Is it you don't fit the system, or we don't want you to play?
Yeah, it is bullshit, because in preseason, there was clips of Insigne playing as a number 10, and he put a few on his story. He put his goals on his story. And there was a reporter came up and asked Frazier, what are you planning on with the Italians, the Bernardeschi and Insigne? He said, I'm going to play Bernardeschi more offensively compared to how Herdman played him. And he said, I like Insigne more in the central role. So to claim that he's not part of your system, it would just be a complete lie, because he's one of your top players, obviously, because he's a very high skilled player, as much as people don't like him or whatever. He's one of your best players, take it or leave it. And to say he doesn't fit your system is a lie, because you've said where you want to play him. So, and then what happened was after that preseason training, all that shit came out about Insigne not wanting to leave. Then the backlash came from the fans and everybody hating on Insigne now. And then now they found out the best choice was to leave him at home until now you need him, because your entire team's injured and you don't have any quality players left.
Yeah. This is what I understand. Like, I can understand you don't play the player because you're trying to move him. Okay? You don't want him injured, so it's going to mess up a deal, right? I totally get that. That happens in all professional sports. You're not moving him. He's not going anywhere. So until you buy him out, right? Till you buy him out,
he's playing.
You either look down that bench and you see him sitting on the bench, or you see him on the pitch. Those are your only 2 options, because you've already paid for him. Yeah. How does a fan base, okay, turn on Insigne, right, when he's not part of the problem? Oh, he's taking up a DP spot. That's not his fault.
The management has all right to just fucking buy him out.
Exactly.
Just pay his money.
Just like anyone else, right? If you sign a contract, right, and you show up to work, you expect to get paid, okay? And I can understand that we are not getting the value that we're paying for, right? But as fans, we're not paying extra out of our pocket. Our season ticket prices go up every year just because. Has nothing to do with Insigne's salary, right? If they've already committed those dollars to him, whatever 15 million right now, whether you pay him out now or you pay him out next year, right? All management's doing is using Insigne as an excuse to not make you focus on how poor this team is, right? But we're just going to say, oh, Insigne is the problem. You got to be kidding me, because if Insigne is the problem, what has Osorio done for me lately, right?
Yeah.
What has
Bernardeschi done?
What has Bernardeschi done lately? What has Coelho done lately? What has any of those players done lately besides Johnson, who's miraculously standing on his head? We're not that we're winning.
He saves us from losing games 2-1, from losing games 4-1, which evidently showed in our Orlando game where he didn't make a save and lost 4-2, whereas he made some really good saves against Red Bulls and lost only 2-1. But
Yeah.
going
But
back
I,
to
but I want to say something about Insigne in the last game. When I watched him play, okay. Now fans have to understand this. He is not Javenko. We're never going to get Javenko. Nobody's ever going to be Javenko. Okay, nobody's ever going to be Josie Altidore. Okay? We're never going to have another Michael Bradley. Okay, all we can do is try and get the best team and the best players possible. Okay, just because we paid all this money for Insigne, that did not mean that we were going to get a winner. Now, not to use Messi as a comparison, but do you think it's just Messi who's making Miami so successful? No, it's the coach who understands the system and plays a very particular system. It's Jordi Alba. It's Suarez. Busquets.
And then all the players they signed to complement them. It's a very like that club, like they went and fired Tata Martino afterwards, and they brought in Javier Mascherano. Obviously because Mascherano's their buddy. I don't know how well of a coach he is, but clearly they're doing well, and they get what they want. They get what they want and what works well with their team. And what do? We don't make decisions.
But Miami, right? They got Messi, and what did they do? They put in the pieces of the puzzle to surround Messi with the best possible players that can play with Messi.
Yeah.
Now, I get it. Messi, he's a god amongst men. You put him with anyone, and he's going to make everything look good. I get that, right? But
it's just a comparison, just an example, right?
But what did we do? What did Toronto FC do? You put Bernardeschi on the right side, you put Insigne on the left side, and you got them playing on islands all by themselves with nobody.
With Prince Owusu in the middle,
with nobody connecting them in the middle. Nobody. So for every dagger that you're going to throw in Insigne, you better throw the same amount of daggers every other player on that pitch. But going back to the last game. Insigne played more in an offensive midfield role, so more like a number
10.
Yeah, more like he said, like a number 10. He wasn't more central. Like central would be more your 10, but he played more off to the side, more to the left side, right?
Later on in the game.
I think the only player that had more touches on the ball than Insigne was Coelho, and it's because Coelho was taking the ball directly from Johnson or the center back and was playing in a defensive role. Just by virtue, Coelho playing in that position, anybody playing in that position would have had that many touches. Yeah. The second player to have, or the second most touches, and I think it was only off by maybe 4, 5 touches, was Insigne. Now, did he have 100% pass accuracy? No, but he's also trying to make those impossible passes. And I guess, there was one pass where he threw it off to the open and he threw his hands up in the air, and I get that, right? But and I think it was that pass was supposed to be to Thompson.
Yeah.
Thompson, he delayed his run, and you got to understand, a player like Insigne put that ball, and he puts that ball in certain spots that there's an expectation of players to be there, and other players missing their assignments. Now, maybe that was a complete duff on Insigne's part. Maybe I don't know. And I still think he should take that one bad play. He got to take responsibility for it. And there's always going to be bad plays. We're not going to be perfect, right? But for a guy who hasn't played, who's been demoralized, right? He steps on the pitch and has almost the most passes. And he makes the most significant pass to Etienne to push the ball up the pitch, cross it into cross and current. So if Insigne doesn't make that significant play in that midfield, we don't get that ball or we don't get that goal. Now you can say, well, what about the play before Insigne? But Insigne has the ability to get that ball past half, right? And he's doing that with little to no support, right? Where you look at Bernardeschi and Insigne, right?
Completely different players.
But respectively throughout their careers, they played equal opposite sides. Yeah. But Bernardeschi, he wants to beat you with speed and power and move that ball down the pitch by himself.
And what does that look like? That looks like your true American athlete.
Yes.
He plays the role of the MLS player. So to MLS viewers, he looks like he's doing a lot of work.
But what does Insigne want to do? The way he gets the ball past half, he wants to have 10 touches before he passes half. He likes to play a possession game, ticky-tacky. He's not there to backtrack and run down defenders. That's never been his game. Okay, he always played high up the pitch on the left-hand side for Napoli. When he played for the national team, he played high up the pitch on the left-hand side. And as a system, the team knew how to defend. He in a defensive formation, they would play in a, let's say in the Italian national team, they would play in a 4-4-2 defensively. They would have 8 players behind the ball, and then your two, let's say your Insigne and your number
Immobile.
9 in Immobile, they would be double pressing. So if the ball shifted over, the right side striker would press, Insigne would shift over, and they would just swing back and forth. They never really passed half, but that was his game, right? And that was the expectation. And that was the raw deal
that he was.
The Manning.
And by the way, that's the player that TFC signed.
Yeah.
So Manning, saying he's gonna channel his inner Lewicki, goes and signs Bernardeschi and Insigne, and then plays them, but not in their roles. Like it's hard to explain. But when you go and sign these players as designated players, and you don't credit them for what their game style is, they have all right to get frustrated. Like, think a year, 1 or 2 years ago, where Bernardeschi had that vaping incident. Remember that? Everyone was out with the Italians. Fans have had problems with each. They've had their own set of problems with Bernardeschi and Insigne, and TFC have never defended the player. Never. They've always used them as scapegoats to hide their poor performances and their poor management. They don't know how to use these players in the correct system. And guess what? If you don't know how to use him, buy him out and get a new system, because you clearly don't have a system and you don't know what you're doing. So these players play their own set styles, and they're not surrounded by the right players, and they're not surrounded by the right coach or the right tactics. Insigne's had a falling out with every single coach. Insigne and Bernardeschi had fights with Bob Bradley. Insigne can't stand Terry Dunfield.
Who could?
Yeah. By the end of it, Herman even didn't like Insigne after he grabbed Messi's shirt after getting subbed in for 2 minutes. It's just, there's no cohesion, and to blame it on them, it's fine. You can blame it on Insigne and Bernardeschi all you want for our poor performances, but it's not up to them to change the team. It's up to management to say, look, thank you for your service. I'm going to buy you out because I've already committed to your contract. We've already paid them. We've already committed to paying them money. Buy him out and change the team now. What can you blame the guy? Insigne, when he was left at home, he still went to the game. He was still watching the game at home against Chicago. He was left out of the lineup, but he was still there. Like, the guy wants to play. He's at training every day. Sure, you know what? He's horrible. He can't, I'm just saying, from a fan's perspective, he's horrible. He can't run. He complains. He gets injured. But you know what? He's still a good player, and you're still paying him the money. So you're going to either play the guy or buy him out.
We have Toronto FC and its fans. We have no obligation to TFC2 and to have these young players step foot on the pitch. We're not a development team. So if we cannot, why doesn't management just come right out and say, we're done this year. We're not going to win a game. We have a puppet as a coach. Okay, we're not going to be signing any players because who wants to come to Toronto? And we don't have the money to buy Insigne, so we're just going to run out his contract. Well, then play him. Play him, because I don't want to see these TFC2 players who maybe should have maybe a crack in the CPL, right? Playing on the pitch. Get your best starting 11 out there. You trying to tell me that Insigne does not make your best starting 11 or at least a bench player? And you've already paid him. Now, you're already committed to those dollars. Why don't you play him? This is absolute ludicrous. It's insane. Okay? Do I want better? Yes. When I say yes, I want him gone, not because I dislike him, it's because
that will make the team better, is reshifting everything, buying him out now, and making changes now.
Yeah.
Whereas it should have been done in the offseason or whenever they wanted to do it. But what did they choose to do instead in the offseason? Was right as the season ended, the only stigma on Insigne was after he didn't take that shot against Chicago when he left it and went to pass it to Kerr. People had outrage. I can't stand this guy anymore, me in particular. But yeah, after the end of the season, what did they say? When obviously the question was asked to Keith Peely in the interview, they said, what's your thoughts on Insigne? What did he say? He said, we're open to options. It's got to be the stupidest response I've ever heard. We're open to options. So you haven't said what you're doing, and you've basically just said, we're going to try to move him, but if he doesn't take a cheap deal, then we're not going to move him. So what they do instead is they try to get him off on cheap deals they try to pay upwards of the rest of his contract to two relegating teams, one in Italy and one in Spain, who are going to be playing in the second division next season, and one to Besiktas, which he's openly said he doesn't want to go to Turkey to. So you've sold him short on 3 deals. He's going to say no. And then look, if you're TFC and you're trying to move him, and if he doesn't take those deals, you should then say you're either taking these deals or you're getting bought out. And that should be your decision. But what TFC did is they didn't make a decision. They just tried to get him out, and they never stuck behind him. The decision was either to buy him out and get rid of him, either by a trade or a buyout, or you get the fans behind the guy. Never once did they try to promote Insigne or get the fans behind him. It was because of him being painted as this guy that took down all these deals and wanted to stay at home and sit on his ass. That's what the fans looked at. Whereas TFC could have changed the whole narrative and said, look, we're going to get behind you and we're going to build a team behind you. But they didn't do either of those, which is why we're in
Insigne is not part of any of the marketing.
No.
Right? He's
they've cut him from everything.
In this year's training camp, he was not even in the best starting 11. They had him on the 3rd rotation.
Yeah.
I mean, so I get it. The intention all along was to move him. Fine, because we need to put that money elsewhere.
And if the intention was to move him and they didn't move him, you could still buy him out and change your team. Like, sure, you can look at the best case scenario, but then you have to cut your losses. You have to buy him out and change his team. You cannot sit him at home and then bring him in later. Because look, the guy, I've seen him play. The guy looks heavily unmotivated. The fans don't want to. The fans don't want to see him play. The fans don't want to see us keep fucking losing. And apparently, according to Osorio, he's a distraction in the dressing room. So, make your decision.
Well, no, not that he's a distraction.
The situation is a distraction.
So
make your decision. That's what it is. They're using him as the scapegoat.
But going back to the game against New York, so this is a guy who wasn't part of your first or second squad in preseason, right? Who knows at training if he's not in the first or second squad in preseason, what makes you think he's practicing with the first team at the training grounds, right? So is he practicing with all the other substitute players? Like, how do you build that chemistry? How do you do that? And he didn't play the first 3 or 4 games, whatever it was. So his first game was against New York. He played the entire 90 minutes.
Yeah.
So he plays the entire 90 minutes, made significant passes. And this guy, so the one who's got the least motivated player on the team, the player that the team wants you to hate, I think he did a bang-up job considering the circumstances, right?
Yeah.
So what are we going to expect this Saturday?
No.
Do we? No. I mean, do we look down the pitch
yeah.
and do we see another Insigne sitting in the press box? Like, as fans, play him. Sell his jerseys. There's still people that love him and want to buy his jerseys. You've already committed the dollars to him.
Yeah.
So, play him. And maybe good things will happen, because I tell you, right, as much as I think Simoranich he's a great player. I mean, nice, young, talented player. He's got a lot of years ahead of him. He does not start over Insigne. Okay? Nobody on that team starts over Insigne. Maybe, you substitute him out at the 70th minute mark, but makes you wonder why, Frazier played him for the full 90 minutes. It's kind of interesting when you think about it. Guy who doesn't fit your system, but plays the entire 90 minutes and looked good. How does a guy, right, that doesn't fit your system, plays 90 minutes and had a decent game under the circumstances?
We've already called out bullshit. Like, we've already known that his not fitting a system is complete bullshit. And even Frazier after the game said he liked what he saw from Insigne, which is funny in my opinion, because I didn't like what I saw. Like, yes, sure, he made a lot of touches, he made significant passes, but he looked heavily unmotivated and wasn't an impactful player. But again, he wasn't looking good. And look, as a biased fan, you can look at Insigne and say, "Oh, what did he do? He's horrible. He might as well stay at home." But he didn't do anything less than any other player on that team.
Yep.
The entire team is horrible, and that's what people don't realize, is every single player is playing like shit. If that makes sense. If people, you can look through the lens of one player and say, "Oh, they're horrible," or you can look through the lens of the entire team and say the entire team is horrible, which is the truth.
I was a little bit surprised of that game against New York. I thought they were going to come out really motivated. I thought they were going to be prepped for that game. It almost seemed like they weren't, unless that was their preparation to sit on their heels and absorb. If that's what their game plan was, then I totally misread that. But I thought they were going to come out guns blazing. And you saw that afterwards when Etienne came on. Etienne and Kerr, like they had exactly. And I thought I was going to see that at the beginning of the game, see some fire in their bellies. But yeah, they just looked like they had the entire team behind the ball, and even then, they couldn't really defend. So I'm not and as you can acknowledge, Red Bulls didn't even play that well of a game,
No.
and I can't see them being that great of a team that we were constantly under pressure the entire game.
Red Bulls didn't have a good game. They got a lucky penalty and a lucky goal of Thompson bringing them onside, but they still would have had 2 or more goals if those didn't happen, because they would have laid on the pressure because they knew they needed a goal at home, and they would have came in hard and we would have got shut down, whereas Johnson wouldn't have had to make as many saves. It's just kind of how the game works.
I want to talk about like the bench for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about the bench for a moment. And when you compare it to, let's say, now I understand, when we, under the Vandy years, when we won that treble, we had an awesome team, and it's hard to compare. It's hard to compare any team to that, because no matter where you looked on that team, like everything was just perfect. Like every position was perfectly filled. But the one thing that I've noticed, so outside your starting 11, who do you have on the bench, right? And the players that you have on your bench, at least under the Vandy years, the players that you had on the bench where you had the odd utility player and you had dynamic players. Like you had
Armando
Cooper, who can fill in various roles in that midfield. You had Toussaint Ricketts, who blazing speed. So if you needed to,
throw an extra attacker on, get a late lucky goal,
right? Or just park the
yeah.
entire team behind the ball and have one person bombing up and down the pitch, and then that was your player. We had
specific players for specific roles.
We didn't have a bunch of TFC 2 signings.
Yeah.
We had maybe one kid, maybe 2 kids on the bench, but we had veteran
dynamic players.
Veteran role-playing players that can go in the spot and get the job done and shut it down and be the proper substitute player. Unlike, unfortunately, Cozy Thompson, you don't know where he's playing. You don't know what type of play. What dynamic quality does he have? Does he have blazing speed? I haven't seen it. Does he have the height? Not really. Is he great with those crosses? Can he get those headers in? I don't know. I don't know what he has. What is making him so significant?
He's relatively strong defensively. Like I've seen him been able to shut down like a lot of top players, but he's too inexperienced, and he's fully at fault for that Red Bulls goal by keeping them offside or keeping them onside. But if you keep playing a guy like Cozy Thompson, in my opinion, Cozy Thompson does not have a great potential. The guy's like 20. Pretty sure he's 22 or 23 years old already. And there's players playing on other MLS teams that make their debuts at like 16, 17, 18, and then the next year they're signed to an English Premier League team, like that DC United center back, I forget his name. Whereas we're still playing these 22, 23-year-olds as a young promising player that are basically past their chance. They don't really have a chance anymore, and we're still playing them as role players.
Well, I just want to say, so on that Cozy Thompson goal, that is inexperience. That is a lack of cohesion through your defenders. Like you saw all the other defenders that know how to play with each other. They all stayed on that line, and I can't necessarily say, oh, it's Cozy's fault, because he was thrown into a position which he's not familiar with, and he doesn't know how to play or to work with the other defenders, right? So it's not his fault. But who put him in that position? Right? Why him? Why him there? To me, it's just like we should be looking down the bench, and if you're going to put somebody in that defensive role, put a proper defensive player in there. Stop with these constant TFC2 players. They should only be filling in emergency roles. But is this entire bench an emergency role? But we should probably
Yeah.
you know, catch, like, because that
Yeah.
was 45 minutes. So